There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to fix your financial life, while secretly fearing that nothing will truly change. It is not just about bills, numbers, or income. It is the tension in your chest when you check your bank account, the subtle comparison when you see someone else succeeding, the silent promise you make to yourself that next month will be different, and yet, month after month, the pattern repeats. You work harder, think more, plan more, push more, and still feel like you are chasing something that keeps moving further away. If you are here, it is not by accident. There is a deeper reason you feel this pull to understand what is really happening beneath the surface of your financial struggle. Most people believe they are fighting a lack of money, but what they are truly fighting is an internal state that keeps recreating the same results. You have been taught to hustle, to grind, to force outcomes into existence. You have been told that if you just push harder, sacrifice more, and think positively enough, prosperity will eventually reward you. But what if the real obstacle is not your effort, nor your intelligence, nor even your opportunities? What if the real block is an invisible mistake, an emotional and energetic pattern that keeps you misaligned with the very abundance you desire? This is where the shift begins. Prosperity is not only a financial condition, it is a state of coherence between your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. When you are internally divided, wanting wealth but feeling fear, desiring expansion but expecting loss, you create resistance that no amount of effort can override. Your nervous system remains in survival mode, scanning for threats, reacting to scarcity, interpreting neutral situations as danger. And from that state, every decision becomes defensive. You save from fear, you spend from stress, you accept less because you doubt more. Over time, this emotional chemistry becomes familiar. Your body memorizes it. Scarcity stops feeling uncomfortable and starts feeling normal. The hidden mistake that blocks quantum prosperity is not negativity in the obvious sense. It is trying to manifest from urgency. It is seeking money as a rescue instead of building yourself into someone who can receive, manage, and sustain it. When your desire for wealth is fueled by panic, comparison, or the need to prove your worth, your actions carry tension, and tension narrows perception. You stop seeing possibilities. You become reactive instead of creative. You chase instead of attract. Aligning with the universe does not mean waiting passively for miracles. It means regulating your internal state so that your decisions come from clarity instead of fear. It means recognizing when your body is in contraction and choosing to respond differently. It means understanding that abundance requires emotional capacity, the capacity to receive without guilt, to grow without self-sabotage, and to remain steady even when results are still forming. In this journey, you are not learning how to get money. You are learning how to stop fighting it. You are learning how to dissolve the inner conflict that keeps prosperity at a distance. Because when your mind, body, and intention move in the same direction, something powerful happens. Effort becomes focused, opportunities become visible, and what once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. There is a subtle emotional pattern that quietly shapes financial reality long before money ever enters or leaves your hands. It begins as a feeling, tightness in the stomach when thinking about the future, restlessness when others appear to advance faster, a constant background noise that whispers that there is never quite enough. This sensation does not disappear simply because income increases. In fact, many people discover that even when they earn more, the internal pressure remains unchanged. The external numbers shift, yet the inner climate stays the same, and from that climate, familiar outcomes continue to grow. Scarcity is not merely the absence of resources. It is a state of nervous system activation. When the body perceives instability, it shifts into protection mode. Heart rate subtly increases, breathing becomes shallow, and perception narrows toward potential threats. In this condition, decisions are shaped by avoidance rather than vision. Financial conversations feel heavier than they need to be. Opportunities are analyzed through the lens of what could go wrong instead of what could expand. Over time, this protective stance becomes automatic. The body memorizes the chemistry of urgency and begins to recreate it, even in neutral circumstances. This is where the hidden misalignment takes root. A person may consciously desire prosperity, yet unconsciously remain loyal to the emotional identity of struggle. The mind says, "I want abundance," but the body is accustomed to vigilance. That vigilance influences tone of voice, negotiation posture, risk tolerance, and even creativity. When survival energy dominates, imagination contracts. Instead of exploring innovative paths, the mind circles around immediate relief. Temporary solutions replace strategic growth. Spending becomes emotional release. Saving becomes anxious control. Neither state creates stability. Both emerge from the same internal tension. Another layer of this dynamic lies in how attention directs energy. Whatever receives consistent focus becomes amplified in perception. If attention is habitually placed on lack of time, lack of capital, lack of connections, the brain strengthens neural pathways that confirm this narrative. It filters information accordingly, highlighting evidence that supports the story of limitation. Gradually, identity forms around being someone who is always catching up or never quite there. Identity then shapes behavior, and behavior reinforces results, closing the loop in a way that feels frustratingly inevitable. There is also the quiet distortion of trying to control outcomes too tightly. When prosperity becomes a symbol of safety, every delay feels threatening. Waiting becomes intolerable. Fluctuation becomes proof of failure. In this state, urgency disguises itself as productivity. The calendar fills, the mind races, and exhaustion increases. Yet beneath the activity lies fear, the fear that if control loosens, everything will collapse. Ironically, this rigidity limits the very expansion it seeks. Creativity requires psychological space. Strategic thinking requires calm. Connection requires presence. None of these flourish in chronic tension. Alignment with the universe is not a mystical abstraction. It is coherence. It is the moment when thought, emotion, and action move in the same direction without internal contradiction. Coherence feels steady rather than frantic. It allows ambition without desperation. From this steadiness, financial choices become clearer. Investments are evaluated with discernment instead of panic. Boundaries are expressed without guilt. Opportunities are recognized because perception is no longer clouded by survival noise. When the internal atmosphere shifts, external behavior naturally follows. The body relaxes enough to think long-term. Conversations become more confident because they are not fueled by hidden fear. Value is offered with clarity rather than apology. In this calmer state, prosperity no longer represents rescue. It becomes a reflection of stability. And stability, unlike urgency, creates conditions where growth can take root and sustain itself over time. Beneath financial frustration, there is often a deeper emotional conflict that rarely gets acknowledged. It is not simply fear of not having enough. It is fear of becoming someone different if abundance truly arrives. Many people imagine prosperity as freedom, yet at an unconscious level they associate it with judgment, isolation, or even rejection. If money changes status, expectations change. If expectations change, identity feels threatened. And when identity feels threatened, the nervous system resists expansion, even while the conscious mind insists that growth is desired. This internal contradiction can quietly sabotage progress. A person may work tirelessly, develop skills, and pursue opportunities, yet subtly downplay achievements the moment they begin to gain traction. Raises are negotiated hesitantly. Prices are set lower than value warrants. Projects are abandoned just as visibility increases. On the surface, these actions appear circumstantial. Underneath, they are expressions of loyalty to a familiar self-image. If someone has long identified as the one who struggles, who sacrifices, who survives through endurance, stepping into prosperity can feel like betrayal of that story. Family narratives often deepen this pattern. Messages absorbed in childhood, spoken or implied, shape beliefs about money and worth. Perhaps wealth was associated with arrogance, corruption, or emotional distance. Perhaps financial stress was normalized to such a degree that calm stability feels foreign. These early impressions embed themselves not only in thought, but in emotional memory. Later in life, when prosperity begins to emerge, the body may respond with subtle discomfort. It may feel undeserved, unsafe, or temporary. Without conscious awareness, behavior shifts to restore the previous equilibrium. Another dimension involves the connection between money and belonging. Humans are wired for attachment. If prosperity appears to threaten connection with peers or family, self-sabotage can arise as a protective mechanism. Success may be minimized to remain relatable. Ambition may be softened to avoid criticism. Generosity may become excessive to prevent envy. In each case, abundance is diluted to preserve emotional security. The individual is not consciously rejecting wealth. They are prioritizing connection over expansion, often without realizing the trade-off. This dynamic becomes even more complex when guilt enters the equation. Some people experience discomfort when receiving more than those around them. Others feel uneasy charging appropriately for their work, equating higher compensation with selfishness. Guilt narrows the capacity to receive. It triggers compensatory behavior, overworking, overgiving, or overspending to relieve internal tension. As a result, financial gains dissipate before they can stabilize. The cycle reinforces the belief that prosperity is fleeting, further strengthening subconscious resistance. Alignment with the universe in this context involves reconciling identity with expansion. Prosperity cannot be sustained if it conflicts with one's sense of self. The inner narrative must evolve to include success as natural rather than disruptive. This shift does not require abandoning values or relationships. It requires redefining them. Abundance does not inherently corrupt character. It amplifies existing traits. Stability does not sever connection. It can enhance generosity and impact when rooted in authenticity. When identity integrates growth, behavior transforms organically. Communication becomes clearer because worth is no longer questioned internally. Decisions reflect long-term vision rather than short-term approval. Boundaries feel less confrontational and more grounded. Instead of oscillating between ambition and retreat, there is steadiness. Financial progress becomes less dramatic and more consistent, shaped by coherence rather than emotional swings. In this integration, prosperity ceases to be a distant reward and becomes a natural extension of alignment. The universe is not withholding abundance. It responds to congruence. When thoughts, emotions, and identity harmonize with expansion, resistance softens. What once felt like an uphill battle begins to resemble a path unfolding at a sustainable pace, supported by inner stability rather than driven by hidden fear. There is a profound difference between being busy and being aligned. Many individuals exhaust themselves in constant motion, filling every hour with tasks, obligations, and responsibilities, believing that relentless effort is the only path to financial breakthrough. Activity creates the illusion of progress. The calendar looks full, the mind feels occupied, and fatigue becomes a badge of honor. Yet beneath this momentum, there is often a subtle absence of direction. Movement without clarity scatters energy, and scattered energy rarely compounds into sustainable prosperity. When urgency drives productivity, decisions become reactive rather than strategic. Opportunities are accepted quickly out of fear that nothing better will come. Projects are pursued because they promise immediate income, even if they dilute long-term positioning. Conversations are rushed, negotiations are softened, and boundaries blur under the weight of pressure. Over time, this pattern reinforces instability. Financial life begins to resemble a series of short-term solutions stitched together by exhaustion. The nervous system remains in heightened alert, interpreting every fluctuation as a potential threat. This constant acceleration narrows perception. Under stress, the brain prioritizes survival pathways. Creative thinking diminishes. Long-term planning feels abstract or overwhelming. In such a state, even capable individuals overlook possibilities that require patience or refinement. They may possess valuable skills, yet struggle to translate them into structured offers. They may have insight, yet hesitate to position themselves confidently. The tension within becomes mirrored in external inconsistency. Another subtle distortion emerges when control becomes excessive. Control can feel responsible, even virtuous, but when it stems from fear, it restricts expansion. Every detail must be managed. Every outcome must be anticipated. Uncertainty becomes intolerable. This rigidity limits collaboration and spontaneity, two forces that often catalyze growth. Prosperity frequently enters through relationships, timing, and creative risk. When the internal environment resists unpredictability, opportunities may pass unnoticed or be declined prematurely. There is also the tendency to confuse sacrifice with value. Many people equate worthiness with overexertion. They believe that if they are not tired, they are not deserving of success. This belief ties prosperity to struggle, ensuring that ease feels suspicious. Even when moments of flow appear, when work feels natural and income follows smoothly, they may be dismissed as temporary or undeserved. The body, conditioned to associate achievement with strain, subtly reintroduces tension to restore familiarity. Alignment with the universe in this dimension involves cultivating steadiness rather than speed. Steadiness creates space for discernment. It allows evaluation without panic. It supports consistency, which is the true architect of compounding growth. When the internal rhythm slows to a sustainable pace, perception widens, patterns become visible, strengths clarify, strategic decisions replace impulsive reactions. Income begins to reflect accumulated value rather than frantic pursuit. In this steadier state, contribution becomes central. Prosperity expands when value is clearly expressed and consistently delivered. Instead of chasing income, attention shifts toward refining skill, strengthening communication, and deepening impact. Financial return then emerges as a natural response to aligned contribution. There is less oscillation between extremes of hope and despair. Instead, there is gradual reinforcement of confidence rooted in evidence. As coherence strengthens, work no longer feels like a battle for survival. It becomes a channel through which purpose translates into tangible results. Rest becomes restorative rather than guilt-ridden. Planning becomes intentional rather than reactive. Growth feels earned not through exhaustion, but through clarity. The fight with money softens, replaced by a relationship built on stability, direction, and trust in one's capacity to navigate expansion without losing equilibrium. Time exerts a quiet psychological pressure that shapes financial behavior more than most people realize. There is an unspoken fear that opportunities are slipping away, that others are advancing faster, that a decisive moment has already passed. This perception generates urgency, and urgency distorts judgment. When the mind believes it is running behind, it seeks acceleration at any cost. Choices become compressed. Patience feels dangerous. Long-term cultivation appears too slow to satisfy the anxiety of catching up. In this compressed state, prosperity becomes something to seize rather than something to grow. This subtle race against time fuels a pattern of fluctuation. Momentum builds quickly, often accompanied by bursts of motivation and bold plans. Yet beneath the excitement lies tension. If immediate results do not materialize, discouragement follows just as swiftly. The nervous system swings between hope and frustration, expansion and contraction. Financial stability struggles to take root in such oscillation because growth requires consistency, and consistency requires emotional regulation. Another layer of this dynamic involves the expectation of rescue. Sometimes prosperity is unconsciously framed as a dramatic turning point, a single event that will erase past struggles and instantly validate effort. This narrative intensifies attachment to outcomes. Each opportunity is loaded with disproportionate significance. When results fall short of the imagined breakthrough, disappointment deepens the sense of inadequacy. The cycle of anticipation and letdown reinforces the belief that abundance is elusive or conditional. Receiving in reality demands more than desire. It requires capacity. Capacity includes organizational clarity, emotional resilience, and the ability to sustain increased responsibility without collapsing under pressure. Without this internal structure, sudden financial gains can feel destabilizing. The body may respond with unease, prompting impulsive spending or avoidance behaviors that return circumstances to a familiar baseline. It is not that abundance disappears arbitrarily. It is that the internal container has not expanded alongside it. There is also the tension between surrender and passivity. Some interpret alignment as waiting for perfect timing, assuming that effort should cease in order to allow universal flow. Others push relentlessly, fearing that any pause signals laziness. Both extremes stem from imbalance. Flow emerges when participation and trust coexist. Engagement remains active, yet not frantic. Patience coexists with persistence. In this equilibrium, progress unfolds with steadiness rather than dramatic spikes. The perception of delay often conceals invisible growth. Skills are sharpening, relationships are forming, Insights are maturing beneath the surface. Yet when focus remains fixed on immediate financial markers, these subtler developments are overlooked. The brain, conditioned to measure worth through visible results, dismisses incremental improvement. This dismissal feeds impatience, which then disrupts the very processes that require time to compound. Alignment with the universe in this stage involves reconciling with process. Prosperity resembles cultivation more than conquest. Seeds require darkness before they emerge. Roots expand unseen before branches rise into visibility. When the internal climate accepts gradual expansion, emotional turbulence diminishes. The body no longer interprets waiting as threat. Decisions become measured rather than rushed. Strategic patience replaces impulsive reaction. As steadiness integrates, the relationship with time softens. Growth feels cumulative rather than sporadic. Setbacks are interpreted as adjustments rather than verdicts. Financial life begins to reflect rhythm instead of chaos. Income may still fluctuate, but the internal response remains grounded. In this grounded state, opportunities are not forced into existence nor anxiously anticipated. They are recognized and engaged with clarity. When the battle against time subsides, something profound shifts. Prosperity is no longer chased as an escape from the present. It is built from the present. The hidden mistake, attempting to outrun insecurity through acceleration, loses its grip. What remains is alignment, steady intention, regulated emotion, and consistent action moving in harmony. From this harmony, abundance no longer feels distant. It begins to feel like a natural extension of who you are becoming. Prosperity has never been a battle between you and money. It has always been a dialogue between your internal state and the reality that reflects it back. Throughout this journey, a deeper truth has quietly emerged. The hidden mistake was never a lack of effort, intelligence, or ambition. It was the internal contradiction between desire and fear, between expansion and survival, between wanting abundance and remaining loyal to struggle. When urgency drives your pursuit of wealth, when identity resists growth, when time feels like an enemy, the nervous system stays in contraction, and contraction cannot sustain prosperity. Alignment changes everything, because alignment creates coherence. When your thoughts are clear, your emotions regulated, and your actions intentional, something stabilizes inside you. From that stability, decisions sharpen, boundaries strengthen, contribution deepens. Prosperity becomes less about chasing outcomes and more about embodying capacity. You no longer seek money as rescue. You become someone who can hold, manage, and multiply it without losing equilibrium. The universe does not respond to panic. It responds to coherence. So now the question becomes personal and unavoidable. Are you willing to release the identity of struggle and step into the steady expansion that prosperity requires? If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and continue watching the next video on the end screen. Your transformation is not a single moment. It is a path, and the next step is already waiting for you.